It is just past 7:05 p.m. on Thursday, November 9th, 2023. I am calling to order the meeting of the Town of Wenham Planning Board. I am Dan Pasquarello. We have a quorum, Peter Clay. And Rick Woodland.
Yes.
We have an entirely administrative agenda. Well, before I say that, I should say that this is an open meeting. It is being recorded. It is also being broadcast on HWCam. I think it's also on Zoom. Is that right, Margaret?
Yes.
Okay.
There we are.
Okay, so we have an entirely administrative agenda tonight. The first item on the agenda is the endorsement of the 8 Cedar Street definitive subdivision covenant and plans. I know that Mr. Anderson, Mr. Woodland, and I have already signed the plans. Margaret, you need a vote from us.
I need your board to vote to allow you to endorse the covenant.
Okay.
I just need one signature on the covenant, so if you want to take a vote to.
So if there's a motion for me to endorse the covenant, I'll entertain that.
I'd like to make a motion to endorse the covenant for the property on Lily Lane. Is that correct, Margaret?
Yes, at 8 Cedar Street.
At 8 Cedar Street. And is it dated?
We'll date it as of today.
Dated as of today.
Yeah, when you,
I think you have to move for
I move.
for me to...
Second. Move that the
On behalf of the
chairman,
board, Vice Chairman.
Vice Chairman, on behalf of the board, to put his signature on this covenant document for 8 Cedar Street, Lily Lane, to be dated today.
Yeah, just for the record, it's the Town of Wenham Planning Board surety covenant.
it is, yeah.
Yep. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Peter Clay, aye.
And I vote aye as well.
Do I need to sign that?
You need to sign the
Peter.
plans, Peter, yes. Planning Board, you want me to date this today, right?
One signature is here, one signature is here, all the rest are up here, and the last one's way over there on the other side. Okay, just, yeah. Just to throw us off.
Do I need to print my name, or I'm okay just signing?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so Peter, as you're doing that, the next item on the agenda is the 47 Maple Street preliminary subdivision plan. I believe we have a request for a continuance of this by Griffin Engineering until the December meeting?
They've asked to stay on the agenda for the December meeting, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so
It's not necessarily a public hearing, it's a preliminary plan.
Right.
So,
we'll hear from them in December.
still working out some of the details.
Okay. Next up, discussion on possible zoning amendments. First sub-item is inclusionary zoning. And I know, Margaret, you have a memo that you want to talk about.
I do, thank you.
I just want to take a pause.
Yes.
Does the Affordable Housing Trust have a quorum? Do you need to call to order?
They don't.
Okay, great, just want to double check, so we're not any kind of violation.
We did post just in case, but you don't have a quorum, so there's no need to so we've been talking, and I've talked with the Affordable Housing Trust about the possibilities of creating an inclusionary zoning bylaw for Wenham. We currently don't have one. We do have a few provisions in the bylaw for special permits that require some affordable units, if like for flexible development, like the Wenham Pines, senior living overlay, those kinds of, but it's only by special permit. So what we've talked about is getting something on the books that requires any development over a certain number of units, if, whatever number you choose, to create affordable units, so that
10%.
Well, 10%, an inclusionary zoning bylaw can go more than that if you choose to. You don't have to go over it, but, so that whenever a development is built, there is some affordable units to offset that number. Because as our number of units, year-round housing units, goes up, that 10% tends to go down. You know, we are now at 12.8%, so we're really in good position. And I have to applaud the prior planning board or, you know, ZBA, whoever, who were able to negotiate affordable units for most developments that we've seen, come like Spring Hill. We got 2 out of that, maybe 2. Wenham Pines, and I think for the Boulders, there was a negotiation for some money, cash in lieu of units. But as developments come in, like the one off of Arbor Street, Settlers Lane. So that was a not substantial, you know, it wasn't a huge subdivision, but you know, it added a few units, and there was nothing really to offset that. So, that being said, with the upcoming MBTA regulation possibly taking effect, when we draft the zoning for that, we are allowed by the state's regulations to put in an inclusionary piece up to 10%. You can only require 10% affordables under MBTA guidelines. But this inclusionary zoning bylaw would be for anything else, any other kind of development. And I think in Wenham, it's mostly, we're looking at subdivisions at this point, but if any other type of zoning comes along, it's something you might want to consider having.
I think we should.
So,
Why wouldn't we do it?
Is it also including subdivisions, but does it also include like the reuse of a building? So let's say there's a large building at Gordon College, whatever they want to sell, and they want to turn that into condominiums. Would the inclusionary zoning also fit that, because it's a rehab?
absolutely, yep. And we can, and those are the questions that you want to start to figure out right now. If we want to get this on the 2024 town meeting, we would need to get something drafted. And it's not a heavy lift to draft these. Most communities have them. Hamilton has one. I think Ipswich has it. Most communities around do have them. The funny thing is, though, a lot of communities that have them have not reached the numbers that we have without one. So, like I say, one.
So I'm surprised that we don't have one already, because almost every community does have it. And now that we've reached the threshold, exceeded the threshold, I mean, this is a good way to make sure we stay above the threshold.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I think, yes, let's get a draft going.
So, the 3 members of the Affordable Housing Trust are here tonight too, because they've discussed it at their meeting. So I wonder, are you willing to go through some of these questions with the group? And
Sure.
Do you have input first, or do you want to go through the questions?
well, I don't think they prepared anything, but
I've got a little bit.
do you? Absolutely. Huntley?
I'm supposed to come to things.
Yeah, do you wanna, maybe
Yeah.
take a seat up here with
Yeah,
them?
and get a
What do you wanna-
microphone
do you
so
want
you
us
can be
to-
heard.
Yeah,
Move the podium, or how do we want to do this? Okay.
I'll share.
we could move the podium, wasn't expecting anyone just to have to stand at the podium.
That works perfectly.
I'm Huntley Skinner, Chair of the Wenham Affordable Housing Trust. Just some brief comments about inclusionary zoning and the pros and cons of it. Also, considering our particular town and the size of our town in relationship to, say, Salem or some of the larger cities, some of the things we should consider. So just want to give you a few facts about this. Inclusionary zoning refers to multiple ordinances aimed at providing affordable housing for low-income residents. And the history of it was 1971. In Virginia, there was the beginning of an inclusionary zoning, but by 1974 in Maryland, it was officially started as an inclusionary zoning in the United States as for municipalities to determine. So it's been around for a long time, and I just wanted to sort of set that in the framework of our federal understanding. So there's two kinds of ways it can work. One is mandatory and the other is voluntary. So under mandatory jurisdictions, the programs require new construction developers to set aside a percentage of dwelling units for affordable programs. This percentage is usually dictated by the area median income. And in some cases, developers who are unable to meet the affordability requirements may alternatively pay an in lieu fee of or construct, as we were talking about with some of the other developments. The other is voluntary, which is really an interesting one. Density bonuses, expedited approvals, fee waivers, and subsidies are common incentives that volunteer programs offer developers to build affordable units. So there's a lot of flexibility, and sort of the carrot and the stick can work together to help developers and the communities come to some reasonable compromises around how to go about doing this. So the benefits of this are it increases your supply of affordable housing. The inclusionary zoning policies help increase the amount of affordable housing. It also offers a path to meet federal fair housing standards set by the Department of HUD, Housing and Urban Development. It's greater opportunities for low-income households. As the prices soar in the area, it provides help for low-income renters and homeowners to afford lives in the areas that they would like to live in, greater employment, school, and public transportation opportunities. It decreases the economic and racial segregation. Inclusionary zoning can help create economically and racially diverse communities and enable people to move from high poverty to low poverty areas, which is a wonderful thing. This one is really interesting. There's been some studies about health in a community. Living in a mixed income community can have a positive effect on residents' health, such as reducing in stress and overall improvement of mental health, which I thought that's a really interesting component that I hadn't really considered. Sometimes they say that the things that may be limitations around inclusionary zoning would be potential accelerating of gentrification, especially in highly populated urban areas. This can be an issue. Or it might discourage multifamily housing production, but with the MBTA program, we're moving into some of that thinking anyway. And it depends on local housing markets. Sometimes developers may say, if Wenham has this and I want to really just do like a Settlers Lane, then I may not come to build in Wenham because of the inclusionary zoning. It doesn't happen often, but it is one of the things that has to be negotiated with some developers. So I just wanted to give you that particular piece. The other thing that I just wanted you to consider is that probably in Wenham, there's not a lot of land to do 350 units. So we might want to consider how do we, maybe more than the 10% if you're just talking about 6 or 8 homes. So there might be some, rather than just the 10%, to be flexible around what percentage you might want, given how much is being built. I think that's really important. And to keep, so, for example, you could have one affordable for every 8 buildings rather than every 10, which might be more conducive for our community and how we function. And then and that would help us to also keep our percentage up, and I think Margaret was really hitting on that we're so happy that we're at the 12.8% or whatever, and to go below that would be be a consideration that we don't want to do that. We want to do that. And then an assessment in cash option for developments of less than 9 based on a final selling price. You could work on some of those negotiations with builders as well. So this is just our general feeling about it. We think it's a perfect fit for Wenham, and we just wanted to encourage you to consider it more deeply.
So which one, voluntary or involuntary?
I think I think there's a combination of both. I think you can. I think you can. And so I think that you can work on. That's where the carrot and the stick is. We would like you to consider this, but this is our bottom line on this.
Well, you could require 10%, say,
Yeah.
and if somebody wanted to do a greater density or waivers from some other provisions, you'd say, well, we might be able to do that if you give us more affordable units.
Yeah. So then you could say I'd like to go up to the 12%.
Yeah.
The other way around, if you're doing a small development, right, and they can't afford one unit out of 8 is more than 1 out of 10,
Yeah.
right? When you're talking about
Right.
Is there a way you could use the voluntary system to somehow mitigate their costs for that unit, or?
I'm not sure, but I think so. I think that there's ways to to negotiate that.
Somehow
Yeah,
around that.
yeah, I think there is.
So that we can think that there's a possibility for an affordable unit in every development.
Right,
Yeah, that there's
right,
something-
that's,
Something we could
Even if
help
it's a
them with.
percentage.
right. And if you come up with what those incentives might be for them to consider that, that would be helpful, yeah. And I've looked at different towns, I've looked at Salem, Revere, Somerville. It's really good to go online and kind of see what other communities have done around voluntary versus mandatory, and how they've sort of structured it based on their community, so.
Well, one thing I had mentioned in my memo, that currently our bylaws, like the senior housing overlay district, allows for an increased density if 15% of units are affordable. So that's not mandatory, it's, that's a negotiable one, it's voluntary for them. But then the independent living overlay district requires not less than 10% and are on-site. And if they're off-site, they can do 15%. They have to do 15%. If they don't wanna build the unit in the development, they can build them somewhere else, but they have to do 15%. And then flexible development requires 10% for low or 15% for moderate.
Right, and I think in some cases, I read that involuntary zoning is only for the 50%, 80%. If you're 30% low income, you can do off-site, but you can't, and you can rent, but you can't buy. They haven't got a 30%.
30% for
your
purchase.
For a purchase.
Yeah.
So you could rent, but you can't purchase at a 30% yet. They haven't passed that yet. So,
That's of income level, is that what we're
Yeah.
talking about? Okay.
right, so
And
that's.
I think that's what you wanna think about, because in order to be on the SHI, they can be up to 80% AMI.
Can we talk the numbers so that everybody's aware of what I think you probably.
AMI, area median
Area
income.
median
Yeah,
income, and that,
which is-
it's $143,000.
I'm not sure right
I've
now,
got,
but
I
that
got
would
the
be
chart
a-
here for
it's based on
2023.
Boston numbers.
Yeah, it's based on Boston.
And
It's pretty
And Essex
high.
County's even higher.
Yeah,
If
Yeah.
you, if you
high.
just took out Essex County, it's even higher than the Boston number. So 80% of that, a single person qualifies for that, and then it goes up to people, family. So, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the numbers,
Yeah,
the
so the
amounts
Right.
go up,
number you
yeah, for
can
the more
make-
people in your family,
Correct.
yes,
So if
certainly.
you think of, even if it's 130 and it's 80% of that,
Yeah.
that's a lot of,
Make 100
you know,
a year
town
almost,
employees, other kinds of workers in town.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it says the minimum annual income based on housing costs not exceeding 50% of the household's annual income. So a two-bedroom, 80% of the MFI would be 56,650. So and this is the 2023, effective July 3 from, the government on what the costs are. So that can be circulated so you can see what the costs would be.
So I think that we would want to have a mandatory requirement of 10% with then that option of going higher if, as, like you said, if they're willing to.
Yeah, if they're willing to do, we could give them a little more
We could-
density,
yeah.
or we
Yeah.
could give them some other
Right.
waivers that would
But
allow
with
for
the
greater.
10% floor, you're gonna maintain your SHI. And then we need to set a minimum project size, I think. Like, even though it's 10%, you
that's
could
it,
say projects of at least 7 units or something have to include at least one. I'm
So
just
that's-
throwing that out
that's
there.
not- That's more than 10%.
That's more than 10% for those.
Yeah,
I'm
What
not
if we
saying
did
that
one-
needs to be.
Up to 8, and then also throw in that they don't have to put the unit in that area.
It could be off-site.
Could be that, right, so we can work on some kind of options for
If it's
people.
less than 10 units, you mean? Or something?
Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they could build it somewhere else, yeah.
Because I think that a lot of future developments here are likely gonna be less than 10 units.
yeah,
So-
so especially a subdivision.
Yeah.
If we do get into any other kinds of zoning after the master plan is done that allows for, clusters or two duplexes or multis or something.
Well, how many lots for Settlers Lane? That's probably right around 10?
There's like
I think it's about-
six, I think there's 5 or 6 houses over there.
No, there's more, I think there's about 8, I mean, I can look it up
Really?
for sure. Yeah,
And then my question
Yes, there
also
may be
is,
8, yeah.
what kind of housing can they build, right? Because one of the major, what we're finding in impact, and it was true even before I was on the Affordable Housing Trust, the problem is not just buying to own something, but also rental properties? And how can we encourage developers to create rental properties that look like the house that in that neighborhood? And is that maybe where, when you're under 10, you know, is that something we can say, well, we need rental units?
Yeah.
And how do we get that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so thank you for your,
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
The next item here is, it says email from Rick Woodland dated 11/1/23,
Do you?
but I don't,
Yeah, are we?
Oh, sorry.
I had all these questions, I didn't know if you were actually.
oh, if we wanted to go through
Are
the.
you okay to talk about them?
Well, yeah, we can.
or-
I thought we were going to sort of put this in motion.
I think
as-
what I'm looking for is a little bit of direction.
Okay.
You know, what kinds of things, so we're thinking the number of units, so between at 8, you need to do 1. You're thinking, so, and
And
possibly
not
off-site.
necessarily there.
There, right,
There,
so
right.
off-site. And then once you hit 10, you need to create 1
It-
on-site.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be 8, though. I just threw that out there as a, I mean,
Right.
it could be, you could say once you're over 5 units, like if you have between 6 and 10, you have to create 1 with the option of off-site.
Do you, would you consider that if it was less than 10, then that might be a payment to the to the Affordable Housing Trust, or?
How does the housing trust feel about that?
Mm.
A payment in
It's
lieu of a building?
a bit mixed, but I think I would say anyone that builds in Wenham, if you're gonna be fair, whether it's 1 or 20, you gotta have some sort of contribution to affordable housing. And, you know, wherever that split comes, but obviously, a single house is gonna be some sort of cash payment, and 3 and 4, but at some point, you shift the cash payment, or mix the cash payment to a point where it's, you gotta build a house for us.
Yeah, and I think I think the best solution to this is actually the creation of units. I mean, tell me if
It is.
so what we need to be cognizant of is if we set a minimum here, let's say 6 units, that might provide an incentive for developers to say, I'm only doing a 5-unit subdivision. So
Yeah.
so we need to be careful as to how we set that minimum.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that council's in favor of going lower.
So, but if someone was creating a 5-lot subdivision, and we said, well, you have to create 1 affordable unit, our bylaw would also have to dictate what kind of unit does that have to be, you know, and typically, for it to be counted, those units have to be almost identical to the market rate units. If it's a, you know, like an apartment complex or something. I don't know with the subdivision, like at Spring Hill, so they took one of the existing houses that was on the property
Mhm.
and they renovated it. It's very small.
Very simple
It
ranch.
certainly doesn't
It's the one in
match
front,
what
right?
they built
Yes.
at all,
On-
yeah, the
yep.
small one in front. Doesn't match at all what they built. But now Habitat for Humanity is looking to build on that lot now. They have contacted me, so I think they're almost ready to go. Spring Hill donated the lot to Habitat, so they could build a building that looks like one of those big houses, but has 2 units in it.
Which is what they did on House Street. So it looks like a
Yeah, they
single
took-
family home.
yeah, they
A
took
house
the
with a
single family.
house, but it's 2 units.
Right. Yeah. So. Right, Parsons Hill,
Yeah,
right, the whole
Parsons,
Parsons Hill development has,
So it's doable. It's not
it's
unreasonable.
doable.
That they could take 1 and make 2.
So, say you've got a 5-lot subdivision, and you say you have to create affordable, they would build 1 more, give 1 lot to affordable and create 2 units on it, that would, seems odd
Yeah, it's a lot.
to require.
How are they gonna find a buildable lot somewhere else in town if they're gonna do it off-site? I mean,
Yeah.
there are big lots.
Yeah.
But
That's what I mean, perhaps the donation, if you have fewer than 10 units, that when we can come up with a calculation for a donation, at least that way they're contributing, like Gary said, somehow to the affordable housing. But without, I don't know.
If I got Gary correctly, with some kind of sliding scale based
Yeah,
on
we could-
how many
And
units or.
if you look at Settlers Lane, you know, or any subdivision that sells 5 houses, we know around here, that's $1 million to $1.5 million apiece probably for the market houses.
Yeah.
So, you know, even a very small percentage charge that would go to the Affordable Housing Trust off those would be beneficial. But also you could say, okay, if it's just one house, then, you know, it's a percentage of the price. And as you build up to 5 or 6, it's a higher percentage of the price. And then at some point that you decide that over 5, instead of increasing cash, you go, okay, you're at the point where you have to build a rental property of so many square feet, and then that may go up in either numbers or, you know, complexity.
Okay,
That's
well,
worth
we,
looking at.
we can work on
Lots of
that.
options here.
Yeah,
we find.
yeah, there are.
That's why we're here, to think about them.
Okay.
I got a question. I'm just curious, how many, do we know how many potential lots there are in Wenham that could be built on, like, even a single lot? I just wonder how many vacant lots are there, if you will, are out there? Because, you know, we're talking not subdivisions, but for every single one of these that are built, it changes that formula. And it's not gonna be long before that drops below, you know, down to 12, 11 or something. And I don't know how you get around that, but if I have a lot and I wanna build on it, I can't build an affordable. But what obligation do I have is just on a single lot out there, or two?
Right.
So I mean, I'm worried about the formula, that's what I'm saying.
There was some work done, and it may have been done by Jen Golson in the Affordable Housing Trust Production Plan, where they identified all the potential small lots, not 20 acres, 15 acres, but just individual lots, and there weren't many. And then they looked at which ones might be coming available through foreclosure or whatever, and that was even a fewer number. So there aren't many 3/4, which you can get a variance for probably, to 1 acre lots to build on. That's my recollection, but there is a document somewhere
Yeah.
that sources that up.
We don't have a housing production plan, but there was a housing study done.
Housing
I think
study.
some year, you guys, we have that. Let me
We,
look at that.
we still have minimum 1 acre lots, right, or 40,000 square
40,000
feet?
square feet, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's what our minimum zoning right now is. You need 40,000 square feet for
but our
a
single
subdivision,
family.
for a single-family home, so I don't know if that helps to answer that question or not.
Which
And-
is minimally $350,000. Right now.
For the lot,
For the
Yeah.
lot
yeah.
alone, right.
I'm not sure whether we can require something from a single lot, single family home builder.
Well, I don't think we can. It's not
I
a
don't-
subdivision.
Yeah, it's not a subdivision.
Right.
So,
Oh, we started 2 then.
we'll start too. Well, it,
For the
an
turning radius.
example is 8 Cedar Street that you just signed.
Right,
you
so
know,
it
they
could be-
created a
it could be
subdivision.
payment in lieu.
With 2 lots, perhaps
Right.
there could have been a payment for that one, just to,
Yeah, I'm not sure I would set the minimum
at 2.
at 2. I think it's probably 5 or something.
Okay.
I thought it'd be large.
Okay. So I guess we'd also have to talk about what level of affordability would we require from the developer? The 30, 50, 80, or do a range?
Or if it's rentals, is it one number? And is it, if it's purchasing, is it another?
Mm-hmm, could be.
Or is it a combination thereof? Like, since we met our affordable housing number, we can pick whatever number that is now.
Yeah, we can pick what,
Don't rentals count higher towards the SHI than?
no, if you build a rental development under 40B and you have to have 25% of the units as
Right.
affordable.
Okay.
You can count all of those units, even the market rate ones on your SHI. Maple Woods isn't a good example because they're all affordable. But there are developments where only, where 75% of the units are market rate, but if
Mhm.
they're rental, the state allows the town to count all of them,
Okay.
so, but that's only rental. But what it means is you can count the market rate units too, not just the affordable units on your SHI.
So can I just
Mhm.
offer, before we go through all 13
Sure.
points of this memo,
Yep,
that these are very specific policy-oriented questions
they are.
that I would feel better if we had our whole board. I know you need some
Okay.
direction
No, I
for this,
gotcha.
but I don't know how many decisions we want to make as with just 3 of us for this. But is this something we can do as we go through the drafting process?
We can, I think we wanna have our if we wanna have it on next year's town meeting, we should have our public hearing sometime in early January at the latest. So that gives us, a few weeks now to go through it.
Do you wanna create a subcommittee to try to build a draft between the Affordable Housing Trust and the planning board?
Could
To
do
work
that.
together on something and then present it?
If you think, yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I don't think I have a problem with that either. I was going to suggest something more modest, which was like we have homework before our next meeting, that we look at your memo and we all
Okay.
think about it and come back, and
Okay.
then we're all ready to discuss it
I'm up for that.
at
Yeah.
next month's meeting.
Yeah, and we can, when's the next meeting? I think it's December 14th. And that, this time of year, everyone gets busy, and, what we can do is, if you would think about it, look at these questions, I'll ask David and Ann to do the same. And then on December 14th, I'll have a draft ready, cause we're gonna be meeting with you on the 29th of November. So I can go into it with the Affordable Housing Trust at their meeting,
Okay?
cause they'll have all done their homework.
I think that's the right way to bubble it
Yeah.
up too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because you should be the subject matter experts, and we
Okay.
just should worry about the town's view of
Okay.
it, right?
Great, all right, why don't we do that, so we'll have this as a project.
That's a plan.
All right.
We'll have that as a project, all right, we'll go through all the questions with them, and then on December 14th.
Fine. That's good. All right, so the next item here is this mysterious email from Rick
Which I don't have
Woodland
anywhere.
dated November 1st that nobody knows what this
Oh, my
is.
goodness,
I don't have it, it's not in the packet.
okay,
I'm so afraid to tell anybody anything except you, Margaret. Sorry.
I am so sorry, I thought I forwarded that to everybody. Hold on, let me grab that, I
Just
think
a
I
couple
should
of
be able to
suggestions
get it,
discuss about zoning changes coming for the,
yeah,
Okay.
I think I can remember them as she goes on, so we don't
do
waste
you,
time.
okay, see if you can talk about that.
One of them was to revisit why on a two house subdivision, we can't use shared driveways. The other one was, the Commonwealth's gonna get really big now because there's since the 70s, a way communities like ours have kept themselves the same is by creating some pretty heavy-duty requirements around septic systems of all things. And so the shared driveway, have a road, bumps up the cost of a house, and then have to deal with septic systems that are oversized potentially. And so the state's gonna start saying that you need to come back in line with state guidelines for septic systems, which they have a whole guideline on. So it's just to make sure that we're following the state guidelines as opposed to putting in more stringent things that the state has proven don't really matter, other than raises the price of your house, cost of building a house. So I was looking at things like that, just for everyday building in Wenham, how we can be a little bit more market, oh, look at the delay on that, market competitive. That's my 5-minute delay in case I say anything bad, they can
Yeah,
bleep it out.
there's a little delay. Rick, I'm sorry, did you send that to me under, your wenhamma.gov email, do you think?
Probably.
Okay. Let me find that.
Maybe that's why I didn't find it
Sorry.
in my regular inbox. But we can table this to the next one because it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Can you send
mostly
it around
about
again?
zoning,
Those are
yep.
the two things with zoning, really. Because as I said earlier, I think the state's really gonna start now push, as MBTA communities, things get installed, and how they can level the playing field for zoning across the state.
So you are going to send that to us, Margaret? Is that, okay. Next up, MBTA Communities update. So I'm gonna jump ahead slightly here, just to say that we have a public meeting scheduled for November 14th, which is this coming Tuesday at 6:30 at Bucher, which is an informational session for the public. Margaret, we can go through the draft presentation. We've modified the presentation that we used during the joint meeting with the select board to provide this information, give an overview of what the MBTA statute is going to require and where we are in the process. And I think the plan is, Margaret, you're going to do this presentation
Yeah.
on Tuesday. I'll introduce you. Then we're going to listen, basically. This is really meant to be a listening exercise to hear what the community has to say about this and take questions.
I went through the deck, I thought it looked good.
Yeah, so it's very similar to what we presented to the select board. We will present the scenarios that the consultant gave us. And then I guess our goal after that is to get questions and, you know, I don't know whether the public may have opinions about the whole, idea of it itself or, you know, but we figure we'll get questions and then afterwards we can let them know we'll find the answers if we don't have them.
And I think the big point that we need to make, which you do in the deck, is this is a zoning exercise. We're not committing to building anything.
Right,
And it's a state mandate,
yep,
Yes.
so we're just following the law.
And one of the goals here is not to get lost in the weeds of the scenarios that our consultant provided. There's a lot of information on there, and those scenarios actually produce far more than what the minimum requirements are for the number of units we have to zone for.
Right.
But they're illustrations that we can go through that I think are going to be useful.
and I think that the underlying rationale behind these numbers is very difficult for people to understand. Because they're based on.
Including us.
Yes, it
Yeah,
was, yes.
yeah, all of us. I mean, they're hard to understand. The state has made it, you know, not that easy. But, so what I think, like, say this, we tell them scenario 3, we're telling them the guideline requires 365, but this model will allow for 589. That seems concerning, I think, to people. People are gonna look at that and say, why is that? But the reason is because of the size of the lots, like Boulder Lane is a big land area. You can't
Break it.
divide those lots, you can't break it up, even though not all of it is developable.
Right.
It's just numbers on paper. None of this takes into account, you know,
Septic,
septic,
streets.
streets, topography, you know, all of that stuff. So they're just looking at it as, all right, you've got, you know, this many acres, 15 units per acre, you
Blank
can make that
canvas.
many.
Yeah, but I think it's important to, if we get questions on this, to be able to point out that in these scenarios that the consultant devised, they're not necessarily something that we would adopt. We can adopt something that is closer to minimum requirements than what
Right.
these say, so.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great.
So we'll just be prepared for questions. And I mean, oh, also, so I've got my name and then I have some other sources. Deanne suggested, do we wanna put the board's contacts on here? You don't all, you have a wenham.ma.gov email. You don't.
I think we could just say you could
I
reach
do.
out to,
You do,
To
I
you,
know,
Margaret.
Dan, you don't. Just
And
have
then
them
you
reach
could-
out
yes.
to me, okay.
Because
Yeah.
if not, it's gonna be a whole list of names, and who's gonna know?
Yeah,
who-
I know.
You'll be
Who knows where to
presenting,
go.
so they'll identify with you.
Are we
Okay.
gonna record this?
HW Camp's coming next Tuesday, right? Yeah, they'll be at the Bucher on
Great.
Tuesday. It's not on Zoom, there's no Zoom option, cause it's not something
No,
they can do.
but just that we record it.
It'll be recorded and broadcast live.
okay,
I think we're ready. Will
Yeah.
you all be there?
yes.
Back me up, sit in front
Yep.
of me, run into me?
I think you can expect to hear a wide range of opinions
I believe we
on
can.
Tuesday, so.
We've had a few people call, with some unusual questions. I think the public is looking at it. They're looking at the state website, or they're reading articles and,
Well, you got an
listening
you got an
to
inquiry from
people.
somebody who asked if we could shut down the train station, right?
yeah, that
Which
we
is
should shut down the train station.
probably not going to happen.
I think they,
Who did
I
that?
think
Somebody
they
in the
suggested
South
that.
Shore did that.
Somebody
It was
had
somebody on the new
talked
line,
about
I
it.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Norwell or somebody like that.
But I think that's one of the reactions you're gonna start getting. People don't understand this, and it is, could be a bit frightening, so.
A couple of people came to me and I said, you know, this is just an exercise that they still have to be able to afford to build them. And,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Okay, I think that covered it. Any questions about MBTA communities, or
Nope.
good to move on? All right. Master plan update, which I assumed Mr. Anderson was going to fill us in, but he's not here.
Yeah, I thought he would. He's not here. And the master plan is moving along. We're coming into our final phases. So we're putting a push on. Kate and I are kind of really doing a push to get more public input. We're reaching out. We're hoping that we can get master plan members to sit at, you know, like there's a flu clinic coming up, things going on at the library, wherever people are out and about, you know, just making a point to talk it up. There's surveys out there still. The strategies are being, you know, honed down so that we're whittling them away to get a good set of strategies.
Okay.
And yeah, so, and you know, if you have any questions about the master plan, let us know.
All right. Great. So next item up is
There's a letter,
correspondence regarding 69 Cherry
Yeah,
Street.
you got a letter sent to the planning board, as well as the conservation commission, select board, notified of a possible foreclosure on a property that is in chapter. So that's just why they notified you, and I wanted to let you know that.
Okay.
That's why you got that
That's a pretty
notification.
good sized property.
And
It is, yeah, it is.
it's over 10 acres, isn't
Yeah,
it?
at least 10, I'm not sure how many acres.
It's wet in the
So
back.
we are just being notified because they're required to notify us. My understanding is that this is primarily a select board issue.
I believe it will be, if
If-
anything does come up.
Okay.
Chapter land, as you know, has a right of first refusal if it's sold, or if it's sold for a different use, if it changes uses. If someone
Okay.
sells a property to stay in agricultural or whatever, it doesn't have to, we don't get that right of first refusal.
And it goes away if it's foreclosed on. If the property's foreclosed on, then we lose that right. The chapter land then resolves back to regular land.
Yeah, I can't comment on that really, cause I'm not perfectly clear on it. We've read the statute, and it's a little vague.
Okay,
So
so I was under the impression.
town council
yeah,
will
okay.
be notified, and, if it comes to that.
And I understand there may be an issue that if there's a deed in lieu, I only, this isn't our area, so
Yeah.
I know the select board is on top of this, so,
They are.
okay, great.
Yeah. It's just that you needed to be notified
Yep.
legally.
Okay, next item was, we've talked multiple times about this, to have a submission deadline for, or a deadline for submissions to
everything,
our
yeah.
board, so that we're not getting things 2 days before a hearing.
So,
I was surprised to learn that we actually have a 3-week requirement in our,
that's for an application.
for
So
applications.
you have,
Okay.
and everyone does have to give me their application at least 3 weeks in advance, because if it's a public hearing, I have to notify, you know,
Yeah.
do a butter notification stuff. There's another section in here, though, that I read, that requires
Whereabouts?
14 days information to be furnished. So on section 6, the applicant may submit written materials in advance at the hearing, in advance of the hearing, at the hearing, or any time prior to close of evidence at the hearing. So they can submit written materials at any time under this regulation. But any legal memorandum must be submitted at least 14 days in advance of the hearing, unless the board sets a different deadline. So I wasn't quite sure what that meant, a legal memorandum. Like if,
So this reminds me of what was the address on Arbor Street, that the subdivision that went into
60,
litigation?
Yep,
That we were getting submissions like day of hearing.
Yes.
From I don't know if it was the engineer or whoever,
It was the
so,
engineer.
yeah, so that's, and I know that during that process, we were setting deadlines, saying, you gotta get this to staff by such and such a date. It just, it feels like we're not holding people
Right.
to that.
No, no.
And not to table everything, but this is another issue where I think it would benefit us to have all of us weigh in on this.
Yep, because you
Dan
can,
and David.
you can
Dan and
change
David as
these,
well.
Let's do it.
you can
Yeah.
change these regulations just with a public hearing of your own. You don't have to go to town
Okay.
meeting to change these, so, but I feel like that section 6, where it says an applicant can submit written materials at the hearing or any time prior to close of evidence, you know, which you, legally, I think you are supposed to be able to accept evidence at a meeting. You know, a person is supposed to be able to bring you whatever they want you to consider at the meeting. That doesn't mean that you have to act on it at that
That's what I was
meeting.
thinking, can you have a clause in there that says if you want to have this material acted on at that next meeting,
Yeah.
it has to be here 3 business days before?
Or I would say 5 at least, yeah.
Whatever, but, you know,
Yeah.
Right.
before the date.
At least. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, we'll think
So-
about that one too.
Great. The meeting minutes are not ready yet, so we
Right.
will skip over that. We don't have any minutes to review, which brings us to other matters as may not have been reasonably anticipated by the chair for discussion only. Do we have anything?
I don't know if the trust has any more they'd like to say.
Anything more from the trust or the audience? No. Anything more from the board?
No.
Excellent. I think our next meeting is December 14th.
Yeah, Thursday the 14th.
Well, no, technically our next meeting is
Oh, Tuesday. Yep. and I
November
posted for that.
14th at Bucher at
Yes.
6:30, not 7, right?
Be there. It's at 6:30.
6:30.
Yes.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So I move that the planning board adjourn. It's 11/9,
Oh, 11/9/23.
planning board meeting at 7:52 PM.
Until,
Second,
Until,
November 12th, November 14th,
November-
at 6:30 PM at the Bucher School.
okay, seconded, all those in favor?
Mr. Clay, yes.
Mr. Clay, Mr. Woodland, Mr. Pascarello votes aye.
All right.
All right, good night, everybody.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.